Peace and blessings and welcome to the channel. So for this video, originally I wanted to create some Doom the Dark Ages content, and but while I was browsing YouTube, I came across this IGN video that just recently posted that was breaking down the Nintendo Switch 2's game key card gimmick. So I felt like, this is a good opportunity to just kind of go through that video with you and chime in at certain points and see if we can make sense of this craziness. So anyway, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, as well as becoming a member if you so choose. And so let's get after it.
Ahead of the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo went ahead and shook up how they present games that are purchased online through the Nintendo eShop. Virtual game cards are here to stay, and they bring with them a new set of features, limitations, and confusing terminology. Let's break down exactly what virtual game cards are and how they work for Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 consoles. First off, let's answer the big question here. What exactly is a virtual game card? Put simply, virtual game cards are your digitally purchased Nintendo Switch games, where before you used to download a game to your console, you will now download a virtual game card instead. Virtual game cards are then loaded or ejected from consoles, in a manner that is reminiscent of loading and ejecting physical game cartridges. This applies to all Switch games that you have purchased digitally before now, as well as all Switch game purchases you make going forward. For the most part, the gaming experience is the same. Users on the same system will be able to play your virtual game cards, and you can play these games offline as well once they are downloaded. But there are also some unique features that this new system allows for. Because Nintendo now treats these digital purchases as game cards, quote unquote, they will also let you share them in a way that's similar to sharing physical game cartridges. Before this, it was much more difficult to share digital copies of games without just sharing your whole account. On Switch 1 devices with the most recent system software and Switch 2 devices, you should see a Virtual Game Cards button on the home menu. Opening this menu and selecting a user will show all of that user's virtual game cards in one place. Full games and DLC will both be shown here, but any games that you own the physical cartridges for will not be shown, as those are just regular game cards, not virtual ones. From this menu, you can see which virtual game cards are currently loaded on your system and which aren't. You can also load or eject multiple virtual game cards at once from this menu. When you select a specific title, you have a few options to choose from. Load to another console allows you to move your virtual game cards between two linked consoles that you own and use concurrently. You can't have a virtual game card loaded on more than one console at a time. So if you use multiple systems, you will want to make use of this feature so that your digital purchases aren't locked to one console. This only works for linked consoles though. Selecting the Load to Another Console button brings up instructions for linking two consoles. Both of these consoles will need to be in the same room for the initial pairing process, but once the consoles are paired, you can freely swap virtual game cards between the two systems at any time, so long as they are both connected to the internet. You will also need to be signed in to the same Nintendo account on both systems to use this feature. Once two consoles are linked, you can use the my.nintendo.com website to access your account settings. From here, you can load, eject, and swap virtual game cards from two linked systems as you see fit. Lend to Family Group Member is the other major option in the Switch menu that allows you to share your virtual game cards with other Nintendo Switch users who are in the same family group as you. There are some caveats and limitations to this feature, but it is cool that you can now share digitally purchased games with family and friends. Sharing a game with family group members needs to be done in the same room. Unfortunately, this isn't a one-off like the linked console pairing process. This needs to be done every time you use this feature. Once you've shared your virtual game card with someone, their Switch will start downloading the game files from the eShop, and they will have access to your virtual game card for 14 days. During that time, you won't be able to use that virtual game card on your own systems. A person lending out their virtual game cards can lend up to 3 different virtual game cards at once across the family group. A person borrowing a virtual game card can only borrow 1 virtual game card at a time. Once 14 days is up, the lender will automatically receive their virtual game card back again. The lender can also decide that they want their virtual game card back at any time and choose to collect from family group member. The borrower will then lose access to the game, but will retain all of the save files that they created in that time, so they can pick up where they left off if they borrow that same game again, or purchase it for themselves. There are more options to choose from in the individual options menu here too, the most important one being Eject. An ejected virtual game card will still be installed on your system, so you can reload it at any time when connected to the internet and keep playing your game. Ejected virtual game cards are free to be installed on any system you are signed into without needing to pair consoles. So if you use more than 2 switches regularly, manually ejecting your games from one console and then manually loading them on the other may be an easier way for you to load and eject games without constantly pairing and repairing consoles. Deleting a game from your system automatically ejects the associated virtual game card as well, so you won't run into any problems of having virtual game cards loaded on a system that can't play the game. With the previous implementation of digital games on Nintendo Switch, there were ways to download a game onto multiple devices and then use that one copy of the game with 2 different accounts simultaneously. The virtual game card system now makes this method of game sharing impossible, but there is a workaround. If you go to your main account's user settings and then online license settings, you can enable online license. This gives your main Switch the capability to launch digital games even if the virtual game card is ejected, meaning that another device can have the virtual game card loaded while you still have access to it. You can't run the same game at the same time on multiple devices that are online though. For more details, check out our Enable Online License guide in the description. If you're using a Switch 2 system, some select games offer Game Share, where you can play games together on multiple systems while only owning one copy of the game. Sort of like DS Download Play back on Nintendo DS systems. This is a bit more restrictive than what was possible before on Switch, but hey, it's something. That just about covers everything there is to know about virtual game cards, and I promise I won't say those words again in this video. For more information about the Switch and Switch 2 systems, check out our videos on how to set up a Nintendo Family Group, or how to transfer save data between Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 consoles. And for all other things Nintendo, gaming, and more, stick with IGN.
So there was a lot of information that was embedded in that video that you just watched. There was a couple of things that stood out to me, but I still have my share of questions. I do like that they do offer some sort of a game sharing mechanic. I mean, this was like my first real time watching the video, so I don't really have it all committed to memory just yet. But with the whole 14-day time period that you can share the digital game to whomever, and then any time between that, the time you lend it up to 14 days, you can, get the game back, but you cannot play the game that you lent out. And I guess they look at it in terms of, if you truly did have the physical game, you lend the physical game, you don't have it. But because it's digital, I don't know. I just feel like that they could have worked it a little differently, but I don't know the intricacies behind that. But at least they have it, so there's that. It just seems to me that this whole game key card business is just an unnecessary step that Nintendo is implementing to just have a greater level of control over your digital purchases. And I guess you Nintendo diehards, you guys don't mind that. But to me, that's just on top of the other things that Nintendo got going on right now as a company. That just really puts me off from this system. Even as much as I love Metroid and Zelda, I can't see past that. And that's just me. And we can just agree to disagree. And I feel that's a wonderful thing, because where you may disagree with me on this particular situation. There may be another video I might post where you do agree with me. So I think that's I'm always up for healthy debate, but there's just certain things I just cannot accept. And the corporate decisions behind Nintendo are far and away the majority of those reasons as to why I have zero interest in this console. I am aware that the game card has a 64 gigabyte, I think it's a gigabyte limit. And I remember there was someone in my comments section in the last Nintendo video that I did where I posed the question of, what if there is a game that is larger, like say a game that might be 100 gigabytes or 80 gigabytes? Is that cost passed on to the consumer for these cards? Because if you, the developer, only have 64 gigabytes to work with and your game is 80, then the developer is probably going to have to purchase, I guess, at wholesale, I'm assuming. I'm just looking at it from the developer's standpoint. They may have to purchase and utilize more than one key card. Similar to like back in the day when I remember when I had Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation 1, I believe that game was 4 discs. Yeah, I think it was 4 discs. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing where if you have larger games on the Switch 2 throughout the course of its lifespan, if there's going to be if you're going to be needing more than one key card for one game. That's what I'm wondering. And then the developers that may have smaller games, like maybe their games might be only 4 gigabytes. Do they need to buy, the 64 gig key card? I guess there's a low end, but I don't really know. This does help to shed some light on this whole key card situation, because in addition to the price of the console and it's Nintendo being Nintendo with its end user license agreement, the key card situation was definitely a point of contention, because for me, I'm not even a Nintendo guy, but just trying to wrap my head around this, it just didn't really make sense. But I have a bit of an understanding now. So with all of this information, it still does not change my perspective on Nintendo as a company. I do maintain the stance that I believe that they are overpriced nostalgia trip, but I do respect the hardware. I do respect the games. I'm pretty sure if I had a Switch 2, there's probably something there I would find interest to play. I'm not going to come on here and say and lie to you guys. Like, I love Metroid. I enjoy a good Zelda game, like anybody else. I was brought up on Nintendo. But just where I see the company has gone and it being so anti-consumer, that's the main reason why I just refuse to support this company. Now, I understand there might be some of you or many of you that can't wait to get your hands on this console. And, like I tell people in the comment section, look, I definitely hope that this console meets your expectations. I truly do. And I'm happy that people have something to look forward to. I'm not going to rain on somebody's parade. I'm not about to do that. I'm just speaking for me personally. I don't really see the value proposition. I don't feel that the console is worth $450. I do not believe that many of those games are worth $80 to $90, but that's just my own opinion. And based on many of the comments in my prior Nintendo-based videos, a lot of people agree with me and very few don't. And I respect people's opinion. I just look at the reasoning behind Nintendo doing what they're doing and looking at their history. They're very draconian in their approach. And the fact that you have to sign this license agreement where they can potentially brick your console, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm even hearing people that have the console early. Apparently the console was leaked, and the console is essentially a brick. I've been seeing many content creators speak about this, and I thought about making it a separate video, but I guess I'll address it right here, that people are saying that you need like a day one patch to activate the system. And some people are finding that very suspicious. But the fact that you can't even use the system at all, it is kind of odd. And then there are other people that feel maybe this is just the first batch of the Switch 2s. Maybe the second and third batch, you won't need that online update. That will just be something that's already pre-programmed within the console. But honestly speaking, I don't put nothing past Nintendo and them wanting to truly control everything. And, you know, it just seems that this whole game key card gimmick, that's what it looks like to me. This is just another way for them to have even more control over your purchases and what you choose to do with those purchases. That's how I look at it. Now, I could be wrong because, you know, this isn't Microsoft where I'm like an expert at all things Microsoft. Well, relating to Xbox directly. Nintendo, I just know of just their scummy business practices. But as far as what is on offer from the console itself, I'm still learning like some of you. You know, I've learned that the only game that's exclusive to the Switch 2 apparently is the Mario Kart game. So the system isn't launching with many games that are specifically for the Switch 2. Most of the library are basically games that are going to be updated. And then I heard that some of the updates for those games are going to cost you money. Like, it just seems like, I don't know, man. I feel like the people that are really interested in getting this Switch are those people that will not hesitate to sacrifice their left nut or their soul or unborn child to get this console. That's what it seems like to me. I'm being funny here, but it's kind of true. Like, Nintendo fans are some of the most diehard that I've seen. And it's like they're willing to just buy anything that's Nintendo, irregardless of the actual quality or lack thereof. And it just seems to me like this is going to be no different. You know, it's just a shiny new coat of paint. This is the main reason why I've walked away and turned my back on supporting Nintendo toward the end of the GameCube era, because I've seen what the Wii U, the Switch 1, and now the Switch 2, they're just gimmicks as far as I'm concerned. Like, they're very underpowered. And then another thing that I've seen, just to kind of bring this up, just to add this to the video, there isn't really anybody that's reporting like early access videos. You know how, you might have some YouTube creators that will have early access and they'll put out videos on their impressions. To my understanding, there are no such videos because Nintendo wants to kind of keep this secret, because now you have no idea of whether or not this particular game you're buying for the Switch 2 is even good from a quality standpoint. Like, is it worth upgrading from your Switch 1 to the Switch 2? Honestly. I come from a position of a lot of ignorance when it comes to this system. I'm not gonna lie, I don't BS nobody on my channel. I don't profess to be the expert of the Switch 2, but based on what I have seen and what is available to the public, I don't see the point. Outside of you already being a fan for this, and you were already a Switch 1 owner. When I just look at the system objectively, I see a system that's overpriced, that will no doubt release a more expensive version for you to buy. That's the OLED version. A system that doesn't really have that many games specifically for the Switch 2. Everything else seems to just be an upgrade or what have you. It's almost, dare I say it, like a mid-gen refresh. I remember this was what many people had issues with the Xbox One X back in the day, where that was a mid-gen refresh like the PS4 Pro, and the Xbox One X didn't have no games that was specifically for that console. Everything was just an upgrade. If you play Assassin's Creed Origins on the One X, now you have 4K at 30 frames per second, but it's still the same game. Not to say that the Switch 2 is a mid-gen. I'm just saying that's just how I look at it. You know, that's how I interpret it. So I just don't know, man. And then I'll be honest. I would be interested in the system further down the road. Maybe, what am I talking about? Nintendo don't really reduce prices. But let's just say, hypothetically, if money wasn't an issue for me, because it is, because I'm poor for right now. But if money wasn't an issue, I would probably go out and buy a Switch 2 were it not for the ridiculous business practices of Nintendo. I cannot sacrifice my ethics. I'm trying to find a way to explain this, where looking at how Nintendo handles its fan base, looking at their end user license agreement, looking at how in the past they've just caused havoc to the Smash Brothers communities, looking at what they're doing with Pal World. When I look at all these things and these overpriced games that have no business being no $80 to $90, let's just be honest with ourselves. You know, when I look at that, these decisions come from the very top of Nintendo. And it's for that reason why I've made those 2 videos where I'm like, F Nintendo. It's really the corporate execs that make these decisions. Because the games themselves, when I look at Mario Kart World, it looks like a little fun little game. I'd play for maybe 20, 30 minutes, have a few laughs. You know, it will scratch a little itch, right? But it damn sure is not worth no goddamn $80. That's ridiculous. Like, come on. But you know what? That's what I have to say. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm definitely willing to engage. As I said, I was originally going to just create a Doom Dark Ages video. I may still do that because a lot of people don't really understand what the hell Game Pass is from a business standpoint. So for people coming out and saying that Doom flopped and it only sold 1 million copies, that whole narrative, I'm looking forward to completely destroying that narrative in an upcoming video. But for now, to you guys that's looking forward to your Switch 2, I'm happy for you. I hope the console meets your expectations. For people like myself, I looked at this video and I still walk away with a few questions. It still looks like just a gimmick. It's just another way for them, in my opinion, to control your digital purchases. And, you know, there was a few interesting things there, but I'll leave it off there. Anyway, let me go and try to do some editing to this video. Hopefully this video will get 50 views at the bare minimum. And shout outs to all my subscribers. And hopefully some of you may decide to subscribe and may even join the channel memberships. And anyway, take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm out.